I'm so excited about this panel for so many reasons. And as we talk about education, we want you to know that today we're not going to elevate one system above the other, but what we want to show you is that no matter which education system you choose for your family, that you absolutely can thrive in it, because that's what these families today represent. And I also want you to know just the diversity they represent, just a sample of our church. So on our staff, the 4 of us who have kids and are educating them, we actually, in just 4 of us, represent all 3 of these education systems and options. And then on this panel, you're going to see that today. And then just know that this is just a sampling of our entire church. So if you're taking notes, if you have a schedule with everyone's name, the most important thing you may write down today is next to their name which option or education system they represent, because as Will talked about in the beginning, you're going to want to follow up with some of these people and ask more questions. And so make sure that you do that. So we'll start with introductions. My name is Lindsay. I'm excited to just hear from our panel today, and also want you to know that for some of you who are here exploring what does it even look like to have kids in the city, before you get to education in kindergarten on through middle and high school, you may be curious about what it looks like to enter a child care or preschool system. And so I have 2 small kids who are currently in that system, and so if there's any way that I can help you with that, please don't hesitate to let me know. But why don't we start with you, Ken, down here, and if you all would just introduce yourself and also the education system that you represent.
My name's Ken McCord, and we've lived here in San Francisco about 16 years, and we've chosen the public school route. We have a daughter at UC Santa Cruz, a daughter at Lowell High School, a son at Washington High School, and we do have 3 kids, right? Yeah. No other kids.
And I'm Kelly McCord.
My name is Stephanie Takemoto, and we've lived here for about almost 13 years. And I have 2 children who are 16 and 13, and they're both in the parochial school system. But my daughter started off, well, they both started in public school, so.
My name's Carla Oshiro. We've lived in the city for about 16 and a half years. We have a 9-year-old son and a daughter who's going to be 7 in a couple days, and we are in the private school system.
Hi, I'm Christine Tan, and we have been in the Bay Area for about 10 years. We have 4 children ages 4 through 12, and we homeschool.
I'm B, Maraza, and we have a 7-year-old and an almost 4-year-old. We've lived here almost 7 years now, and we homeschool.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. And Ken and Kelly, we'll start with you guys, but just let us know, choosing the public school system, what has that allowed your family to do over the last 15 years?
So our decision to put our children into public schools has allowed them to participate in America's best urban public schools. And they're being taught by these teachers that are passionate and committed, and honestly, some of them could teach at a university level. But they also made the choice to be in San Francisco because it's not the cheapest place to be as a teacher, which is pretty powerful in itself. And lastly, they sit in a classroom that is filled to the brim with diversity and social economic, just so many differences in the classroom. And so we're feeling like, having come through this, that it's just a beautiful picture of how they see San Francisco. Nobody is a surprise to them because they have come in contact with so many people from all walks of life, and they feel safe, and they are great citizens. Want to add anything?
That's great.
Okay. And we'll kick it over to you guys with homeschool, but if you could each share just for a minute, what has homeschooling allowed your family to be able to do?
Well, I think one of the side benefits, it's not the main benefit and why we homeschooled to begin with, but that because we have so much flexibility in our schedule, we can take school on the road. We vacation when it's not high season. We take days off when it's nice out and run to the beach. We can do our shopping and grocery during the day and not, fighting rush hour. So we like that flexibility that's one of the main things that it allows us to do.
Yeah, and what about being in the parochial school system? What has that allowed your family over the most recent years?
It's been a comfort to know that what we get here on Sunday is, they can continue it through the week. And God is the foundation of both the schools that my children attend. And it's nice to see that it's woven into the curriculum. And, they have chapel through the week. And it's really nice to be in an environment where you have people who don't attend church, people who do, and it's just good for my kids to be around people where they can minister to. They're still growing in that, but just to know that they have the backing of the faculty and staff to really encourage them in that.
That's really cool. Yeah, and Carla, what about for you guys in the private school system and what that allows for your family?
Yeah, I think there's part of it which is that being in a school that has a lot of resources, there's a lot of activities and things that are available to the kids, and it's great to have the flexibility for them to be able to engage in those kinds of things. But more so than that, one of the things that we liked about it was that the school has a mission that kind of transcends the head of the school or the staff or even the community that we know about and that we feel is something that we really relate to and that was really important to us as we were making our decision. And so that's something that lays out what the school is focusing on and what their priorities are, and we were able to really clearly see that aligns with what we were looking for our kids, and we feel comfortable that is something that's going to endure beyond, even when they graduate, and so that was important to us.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so I hope that you see, hey, as you're considering your family and what your family values and what you're hoping to get out of the education system, there's so many different things that these specific systems will allow for your family. Now, to talk about just what are some of just how you went into making that decision, and then what does it actually cost your family? So we know what it allows you, and not just financially, but if it's something financially you can give a range on, but also relationally, and then time is a big thing. So what does your system cost for your family? We'll start with you guys.
Financially, homeschooling, I feel, is at the minimum. We buy our curriculum, our books. It just depends if you're part of a co-op. We are. It's something we've chosen. We pay a tuition for our facility and things like that. Excuse me. Relationally, I feel like I'm benefiting relationally. So I get to develop deep, rich relationships with other women that are doing the same thing that I'm doing, homeschooling our children. The biggest cost to homeschooling is time. So finding time to myself and is a challenge, and making the discipline to have alone time. So I'm always with my kids, and then when I'm not, preparing curriculum or reading what I need to teach them for the next day and things like that. So I think the biggest cost is time.
Anything to add to that, Christy?
I would totally agree with B, and I would also say energy, but I think I think everyone would say that. So it costs you energy, but on the flip side of that, I think what that has forced me and our family to do is to prioritize the health of our marriage and the health of our individual selves. And so prior to homeschooling, I was more so lax on my own personal quiet times and taking care of myself, and the relationship with your husband you just kind of take for granted, and then the kids come along, and then not only kids, but then because we don't send them to school, I don't have that time during the day. So I really had to discipline myself to get up earlier than they did and to take care of myself both physically and spiritually. And then my husband and I also have to carve out time, because that's really the only way you can find that time to spend with each other, date nights and weekends away, and you can get creative with how you do that. But so the cost is energy, and if you're not careful, it goes and there's nothing left for yourself or for the marriage. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks. And Carla, what about for you guys?
Yeah, I would say certainly the financial cost is significant for private school. And I don't know if people are interested in the actual numbers, but I looked up kind of a set of schools, and it was roughly $30,000 per year for just for 8:30 to 2 or 8:30 to 3 part of school. My husband and I both work full time, so we also pay for aftercare after school every day, and then that's for 9.5 months of the year, and so there's summer, and so we're still working. So the kids are in summer camps all summer long practically. So certainly the financial cost is significant, but I would also say that I think all private schools offer some kind of financial aid for people who qualify, and I would certainly encourage anybody to look into that, because I don't know if everybody knows. I'm not sure exactly what the criteria are, but I know that everybody offers it, and I think it's certainly worth looking into. Aside from the financial cost, there's, I think, also a cost of time, because there are activities that the school does, and you certainly want to participate as much as you can, and it can be a challenge trying to find the time to do that as well. But there's so much benefit from that, the community that you get into and the people that you get to meet, and we certainly, even from a practical standpoint, we benefit from that, because we have friends that are wonderfully willing to carpool our kids around to their activities when we're at work, and we can't make it to soccer practice at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. So that has certainly been, I would say, to Bee's point also, like we've benefited tremendously from the community that we've gotten into through just getting to know people in the school, the other parents, even the staff, and sometimes it feels like a burden trying to make it to all these events, but it's so worth it in the end. But it's tricky to try and fit everything in.
Yeah, no, of course. And just to touch on something Carla did say, just with the financial cost, just a couple of things when Will and I were even talking is just, it is surprising, or has been, just how much financial aid or scholarships can be offered. And so just to know, like, hey, if that is something you're considering, don't necessarily cross it out because of what those financial costs could be, that we've seen everything range from, $7,000 or $8,000 a year up to $30,000 or $35,000 a year, which seems daunting at first. But if you're able to look into that and have some resources as well. What about for you guys in the parochial system, and just the biggest cost that it is to your family?
The biggest cost, well, we have 2 tuitions, but they're very reasonable for our family. And because for my son's school, it's part of the church runs the school, and so they keep it at a low cost for most families. They raise it a little every year, but it's still very affordable. And thinking ahead, we have high school to pay for. So this is one reason why we looked into parochial schools. But relationally, it's been just nice to know that the values of the school, we hold the same values in our family, and so we can talk about that. And I just wanted to share one of the greatest projects at my son's school and that my daughter went through was a photo essay project that they had to take photos of different things they see around them in the home or outside, and they had to look at those photos and see how God represents God. And it was really a meaningful project to us. We're just so grateful for that.
Yeah. And Ken and Kelly, what about for you guys in the public school system, and what those costs have been for your family?
Well, clearly we're not paying any tuition outside of our tax dollars, and you guys are also doing that. So, but we did the math, and we average about $500 a year with contributions, fundraising, or if there's a need that's brought to us by a certain student, a family, that allows us to be generous. Sometimes that's more. There were years that was a little less. And we felt like we were being very generous. And so God's always allowed us to have an open heart there. As far as time, immediately, as soon as we entered the public school system, we talked to every teacher. This isn't a drop and run. We are a huge part of our kids' education, and we're partnering with you. We're not expecting you to, bring them all the way to fruition. It's a joint effort here. So as far as time, when they were little, I was in the classroom as much as I could, as much as I was needed, which I loved because I got to know all the other parents and the teachers really well. And as they got older, I became more of a hospitality servant for the schools because they're not needed other than like field trips and things. And so now in high school, it's more of just if a need arises, I'm there as far as time. and a huge investment in relationships. We feel so rich in our community for, let's see, 3 schools and numerous teachers. So usually we run into somebody out of that community when we're out and about, and it's just really special.
And I hope you guys are able to see a little bit of a thread here from the very first thing Will said through Mary's talk in this panel, is that there are great costs no matter what option you choose, and even a cost to living in the city, whether it's financial, relationally, your time, your energy, but the benefits and the community that it takes, and just what a gift that is no matter what stream you're in. So I really appreciate seeing that thread through this. And if we'll stay with you guys, Ken and Kelly, and talk about why you originally, how long have you been in the public school system? I said 15 years, but
16 years.
16 years. So if you could tell us why you originally made that decision, and then how long did it take you to make that decision? Because I know a lot of us are wondering, like, hey, as we're preparing for these things, like, is it a 1-year process? Is it a 2-year process to think through it? So why did you make the decision originally, and how long did it take you?
So the decision's been open-ended for 16 years. I think it's very important that you know that we've always been open to private school, homeschool, and public school. We've never closed the door on any of the 3. For us, it started with our fear. If you're fearless about parenting, then I really think I should be listening to you. So we were fearful, and so we turned that over to the Lord, and we found that as we rose above our fear, we started to think with a long view. Second, we looked at ourselves, what our makeup is. And Kelly and I just really weren't wired to homeschool. And so that kind of led us into the path of private school, public school. And so we made a decision in our partnership for Kelly to defer vocation and to be available. And so the public school was a natural choice flowing from a preschool relationship where we discovered San Francisco and the beauty and the power, quite honestly, of its education system here. It's quite unique. It's not like the rest of the United States, and we can talk about that offline. So I would say about 2 years it took for us to fully make that decision. And just as a point of clarity, public education at the higher level ranges between $6,000 and $15,000. So $6,000 for Cal State and about $15,000 for the UCs. And so once again, we want to thank you for paying your taxes because it's quite inexpensive.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. And Stephanie, what about for you guys? Just why did you originally make the choice to go to parochial school, and then how long did it take you to make that decision?
So the decision came when Sydney, she had gone to public school for K through 5th grade. She graduated, and we came to a point where middle school was the next step, and it really just took us the few months that we had to apply. Because the middle schools are much larger, and she needed a smaller environment. And so the parochial school system was a good option for us.
And Carla, what about for you guys?
For us, we actually, especially before we had kids, we're 100% planning to have our kids go to public school. Ernie and I both went to public school and saw no reason why we wouldn't have our kids do the same thing. But as our older child got to be like 3 and 4, and we started hearing about how challenging it is in San Francisco to find the right public school, we were a little intimidated by that. And we were exploring both public and private schools, really trying to keep our options open, and went through the process for both of them. And what we found through that process is we found out a lot about ourselves in terms of what our values were, what we were looking for, and we're kind of relieved to find that we were very, very aligned on that. And so we applied to, I think, like 10 or 12 public schools through the lottery process, and we didn't get any of those schools, and we were assigned to a school that we didn't feel was a great fit for us. And concurrently, we were also applying to private schools and going through that whole process. It's a big time commitment there, and there's tours and open houses and interviews and essays. It's like applying to college, really. So the process, I would say, from when we started thinking about it to when we made the decision was probably like around a couple of years, because we started researching when James was about 4. So so we landed on going to private school because of part of what I talked about earlier, with it being that we felt really aligned with the mission and the focus of the school, not just on the academics, but on development of character of the children. And in fact, we feel like they'll get a good academic education most places they go, but we really love that there's that focus on character. So that was kind of our decision process. It changed significantly from start to finish.
No, that's cool. And what about if you each want to just take a minute to share just what the process was for you guys in making that decision and how long it took?
It took us a little over a year to decide. A lot of praying, talking, and just figuring out what we valued, what was important to us. And so we decided that private school was not an option for us. And so we looked into public school. We visited a few schools. We even put Honor in pre-K for a few months in our neighborhood school. And just decided that homeschooling for us worked. We really enjoyed the freedom, really happy with the curriculum that we get to choose, and developing character, and starting our day with devotions and just things like that. We just really, everything that we valued helped us. And we just really felt the Lord leading us into this direction. We feel like this is what God was asking of us, and so we obeyed.
I really like what Ken said about being open to the different options, because we have always been open to, and the homeschooling decision is reevaluated every year, and sometimes like every week. And we so I'm not going to be up here and tell you that it's easy or it's fun all the time. And there are times, and some of these other, like Mary and I, we'll talk about the last time we were on the internet looking up the, how our public school system. Anyway, so that being said, you can always start homeschooling and then pull them back and bring them to public school. You can start in public. I mean, you can go, it's not like a decision you're making for the rest of your child's life. However, for us, we had to ask the question, what is the goal of education? And for us, as Christians, we feel like the goal of education is to know God and to make him known. And the way that we wanted to do that is to be the primary influence in our children's lives for as long as possible. And so what that means to us is that we want to be the ones, my husband and I, and those that we surround ourselves with, to be the ones that speak into our child's lives early and loudest as to who they are, who they were created to be, and rather than they hearing that message from peers or from teachers or from school systems that we may or may not agree with. And so it's sort of preemptive in that we want to be there, the first ones to hear, well, we know how their day went, and we want to be the main influence in their lives. And then the second reason that's tied to why we homeschool is that with the 4 boys that we have, we want them to look to each other eventually, because it doesn't seem to be happening now, but eventually that they look to each other and see each other as each other's best friends. And it's not to say they don't have great friends outside of the home, but we feel like the sibling bond is strong and lasts a lifetime. And so part of how we cultivate that is that we stay together as a family as long as God will allow us to stay together, because we know we'll let them go, and that will be for the rest of their life. Yeah.
No, thank you guys for sharing that. And if you're in the school system, I hope what you heard is it's reevaluated on a year-by-year basis by almost everyone here. So it's not too late to even think about and consider your options. And if you're like me and you have a child who's going to be starting in a little over a year, to know like, hey, most of this was a year or 2-year process. So don't feel behind, but also what a great encouragement that it's not too soon to start thinking about some of these things and what kind of education system is right for your family and your child. We've heard a lot of the great benefits of the community and things that you guys have really gained as a family and for your kids, but let's talk a little bit about the challenges. And so what's one of the challenges of having your kids in the public school system?
For us, it's been being really intentional about supplementing where there's gaps with leadership skills, spiritually, mentorship, life skills. So we're very intentional about starting our day together around our table, and that's just one thing that's never compromised. And then we're gleaning from our homeschool friends and from our private school friends and going, okay, where are kids lacking? And then we get on that, and we do a lot of praying and ask God to send people into their lives that we couldn't imagine, and God comes through. So that's been the biggest challenge and blessing.
And if you guys could also, I know some people, if you're not familiar, you hear the word public school and lottery, and it really freaks you out, and you're not really sure what that's about. Could you just briefly explain, what the process is and the manageable side to what that allows you to do?
I thought I was up here for moral support. So I've been at this for 15 years, and we still don't understand it. What I know is we have choice. And that choice frustrates. And sometimes I think for those of us who just want to be given the assignment, it's very uncertain. What we've learned is in San Francisco, you apply for a school. There may be a school within walking distance to your home, but you might be assigned to a school completely on the other side of town. The disadvantage is the commute, or perhaps your nervousness about that school. The advantage is that schools are not assigned by socioeconomic status in the neighborhood. And what it does is it allows for a diversity of student population in that school. There are really amazing schools in San Francisco. There are middle of the road schools. And then there are schools that we call up and coming. Yeah. And we ourselves joined an up and coming school. And I will tell you, our experience in the up and coming school, in our experience, was actually better than one of the top schools in the nation. So it's an uncertain process because you're not just assigned to the school. It's not black and white.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know I probably confused you, and I'm still confused.
No, I know. Thank you for elaborating, because I know that is a lot of the questions sometimes that people have. What about for you guys? What's been the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge is, and I'll talk a lot about my son's school, they're run by a church, and so, they have a pretty tight budget. So a lot of the teachers, especially in the past 2 years, have left, or they get called away to a different church, a different school. Our pastor left, our principal just left, so not to scare you from applying to the school, but I think it's just another added challenge, which I think, in the district, you're faced with teachers leaving as well. So that might be the same for, I don't know about private schools, but.
Yeah. And what about for you guys, the biggest challenge?
I think that, one of the biggest challenge anyway that I feel is the time crunch, which I think is not different from anybody else here. But one of the other things particularly relevant for private school for us is we wanted to have our kids not feel like they're growing up in they wouldn't feel it, but be growing up in a bubble and not realize the diversity of people in the city and people of different backgrounds and socioeconomic backgrounds. And so that was something that was really top of mind for us as we were looking at schools, and that was a big reason why we decided to go with a school that we did, is that we feel like they really try hard to expose the kids to different environments, different people, in terms of volunteering and community service, and in terms of trying to get as wide a range of kids as they can into the school. They have a summer program that's specifically aimed for kids in sort of more difficult financial circumstances to get them the same kind of experience that the kids in school, the rest of the school year get. But it's something that we just feel that we have to constantly be aware of to make sure that they understand that there's a lot more out there than what they might see just in their schools or in their friends' schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about for you guys with homeschooling challenges?
The greatest challenge for homeschooling is that I'm with my kids all the time. But the greatest benefit is that I'm with my kids all the time. And so I think I shared more of the challenge in the beginning, so I'd just like to share a little bit about the benefit of being with my kids all the time. And it's a little bit of like what Mary explained earlier. I don't know that I could homeschool if I lived anywhere else in the country. Living in San Francisco gives me so many benefits of museums. We get to go to the symphony. We get to just do so many culturally rich things for free or low cost. On top of that, walking through the city, my kids are exposed to so many things. I mean, Noble's been cursed at walking down the street. Just so many things that I get to be the one to filter that for them and to talk with them. And so, although the biggest challenge is I'm with them all the time, I really enjoy my kids, and that is the greatest benefit for me.
That's cool. I would piggyback off of what Bea said, that you could say that having to be around your kids all day definitely is a challenge and is draining. Beyond that, though, I think the disadvantage, if you're going to call it that at first, is that the kids get to see you, your good side and your bad side. And so there is no hiding. You can't just put on your happy face for a few hours a day and pull it together. They see you, when you wake up and all the way until you go to bed. And that can be and why I think there's a flip side to that is that it has humbled me as a parent to be able to come to my 6-year-old or 10-year-old or 12-year-old and say, I'm sorry. What I just said, what I just did was not pleasing to God, was not honoring to you. I need a Savior just as much as you do. And so we pray together. They've learned how to forgive me. I've learned to forgive them. And so that is the flip side of having to be around your child all day, is that they do see your bad side. But God can use that to continue to shape them and shape your family. And so, that's what I would piggyback on.
And as we close, like in just 30 or 60 seconds, if you could just give one encouragement to someone who is considering the education system that you represent today, what would that be?
I would say we're older, and we have a 20-year-old and who has been through all 3 schools plus a nursery school, and she says she has no regrets, and she's really thankful that we put her where we did. And she gives credit to God because she knows we started praying right away. As soon as we got that notice of that school, we began praying for the next one. And then our 17-year-old son just last week, out of the blue, said, I'm so glad I'm at Washington, Mom. I'm like, okay, this is timely. So just a little encouragement.
I know it's daunting. When we first moved, we called a preschool, and they said we don't take any names of unborn children on our wait list. But just to know that, it takes some time, but you will find a school that is right for your child. And just the fact that there's so many different options and so many different people to talk to, we're all good resources. We've been through it, and you'll get through it.
What about for you guys to encourage?
I would really echo what Stephanie said. I mean, I think that there are so many options, and it does, I think, require a big time commitment and a fair amount of work to kind of understand what's out there and what what will work well for you. But I think, sorry, it's definitely possible to find something that will work really well for your family. I think we're all really happy with what we've landed with, and I think everybody can find that. Just sometimes it may take longer than other times, but there are definitely options that work for everybody in the city.
Anything to add?
My encouragement would be to just really seek, I think everyone has said this, to seek God in how He wants you to raise your family. I think that homeschooling, as in private school and public school, they're all callings. And anything that God calls you to, He will equip you to do. So it's not that, and we get this all the time as homeschooling moms, oh, I can never do that, or I don't have enough patience for that. I'm like, well, neither do I, actually. Nobody does. Nobody has enough patience to be around these narcissistic, things all day. But God gives you grace, He gives you insight, He gives you His strength, and so He'll give you the resources financially. If it's to do the private school, He will give you the energy to keep up with your kids in public school. So I would say that you seek God in what you want to do, and He will give you peace about your decision. And if you're not in a place where He wants you, then you won't be able to rest. You won't rest well, because He'll just keep bothering you until you are in that place that He wants you.
Yeah, thank you. Would you guys help me thank these guys? Thank you guys so much.